2021's The Suicide Squad is the best reviewed DCEU film at 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. 2016's is at 26% and is the worst. How'd this happen? My name is Ben Bateman. This is Action Industries. I'm going to tell you guys in a full spoiler review of The Suicide Squad why I think this is the best DCEU film, and also why James Gunn happens to agree with my opinion. I'll see you guys in a second. A couple nights ago, I walked out of The Suicide Squad satisfied. The brand new James Gunn film starring a bunch of characters that none of us had heard of, with Idris Elba and Margot Robbie and John Cena, and a big load of violence. It's the best reviewed film right now the DCEU has actually made. It sits at 96% with an audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, on the other end of this, of course, you have Suicide Squad, David Ayer's film from 2016. That is sitting at a whopping 26%. Now, those reviews for the new film will change as more people watch it. However, that being said, a 70% difference and representing opposite ends of the spectrum in such a controversial set of different IPs, such as the DCEU, is kind of a remarkable place to be. I think many of us don't really understand how this could have happened. So, a little bit of backstory really quickly before we get into my thoughts on Suicide Squad. David Ayer is a filmmaker who is very talented. He is behind writing and directing a bunch of different movies over the years. A lot of things that are in the Los Angeles crime genre. Pretty straight down the middle movies. Doesn't have a whole lot of tongue-in-cheek humor. Movies that I like, movies like Street Kings and Harsh Times and Training Day, that's kind of his lane. James Gunn, on the other end, is interested in making stuff like Brightburn or stuff like Slither, Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously, most famously. Different styles, different directors. Doesn't mean one is better or worse, but we go back to the original film, Suicide Squad, it getting made in 2016. Now, this last week, David Ayer came out on Twitter and talked a little bit more about this film. Now, he has gone out there to say that there is a version of this film that has his fingerprints all over it, that doesn't have any needle drops, that does not have any of the crazy shenanigans that we saw that we would all love. The Ayer cut, it's called. And there has been a major cry from fans to release the Ayer cut. Even as recently as yesterday, you had different cast members of the Suicide Squad talking about at the premiere why they think the Ayer cut should be released. Now, this is obviously in reference to the Snyder cut, the Joss Whedon versus Zack Snyder, different two cuts of Justice League from 2017, which, by the way, even does have a higher rating on Rotten Tomatoes than Suicide Squad. Not to say that the ratings mean everything, just illustrating my point. All this being said, are we to believe that the version of Suicide Squad that we watched versus the version that could exist out there are drastically different? 100%. I don't doubt it for a second. However, this doesn't change the fact that what James Gunn did with The Suicide Squad is truly remarkable. And really is truly remarkable in the same way that Guardians of the Galaxy was remarkable for Marvel. Why is that relevant? Well, again, getting into my review here in just a quick second of The Suicide Squad, it's important to note that the reason James Gunn is even making this movie is because back in 2018, Marvel briefly fired Gunn for having inappropriate tweets on his Twitter account from almost a decade ago. Now, those tweets he apologized for, and the whole cast of Guardians agreed that he should be brought back to make the third film. Marvel still fired him. In that moment, DC said, hey, we've got this IP, and this movie tanked because we had it cut by people that edit music videos. Will you come in and make another Suicide Squad film for us? At the time, Gavin O'Connor, director of Warrior, my favorite movie of all time, was involved in writing and directing the film. He ended up leaving the project in 2017. In 2018, Gunn comes on, he agrees to make The Suicide Squad. The reason was because DC was desperate to do something with a failing IP. They had put money and time and advertising behind Suicide Squad, and it made the money back. But the movie bombed. It was tanked critically. People did not like this movie. And as many of us have talked about, and as David Ayer has talked about, there is a version of that movie that exists that would not have felt like the one we watched. But what I think is so unique and important about The Suicide Squad is that essentially, this is the movie James Gunn would have made without recognizable IP, without movie stars, and ultimately without a budget. I truly believe that. So much so that when I walked out of the movie, that was the first thought I had. And I put it out there on Twitter. And James Gunn, who by the way does not follow me and I have never met or interacted with, liked the tweet and retweeted it right away. Because obviously he thought about making this movie the exact same way. It's clear when you watch this extremely R-rated, extremely violent, totally hilarious exploration of these characters. That's what James Gunn had in mind, because DC came to him and said, hey man, you took this crazy idea, Guardians of the Galaxy, and they wanted you to make a PG movie for Marvel with these weird characters, and you wrote it, and you directed it, and you did it twice successfully, and people loved it. So will you do that except for us? And it's okay if it's R. And it's okay if it's violent. And it's okay if there's swearing. We don't care. We just want your brand and for you to make a hit for us. And James Gunn did. And then Marvel hired him back to make Guardians 3. So we're going to get another double dose, triple dose, as it were, of the beauty that he makes with Guardians over at Marvel. But right now, what we have is probably the best DCEU movie to date. It's arguable that Wonder Woman is a better movie because of some of the emotional stakes of Wonder Woman and how incredible they are. That being said, the Suicide Squad does everything right. All of the things you want this movie to be, it does. So now we are going to get into the full spoiler review portion of this video. And if you guys like what we're doing here on the channel so far, be sure to do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, hit the thumbs up. We're so excited to be reviewing movies in theaters again as we're back here. We're also doing trailer reactions, live streams all the time. If you like what you're seeing, be sure to get involved. Let's get into this spoiler review. So, you walk into this movie. Your memories all come from a failed 2016 experiment that was recut by music video editors, like we mentioned. You have all these characters, all this baggage. Captain Boomerang, and you have Harley Quinn, and you have your memory of Deadshot, Will Smith, and there's all these new characters we've seen in the trailer. And what happens is, this is the big spoiler moment, guys. I'm going to throw it all out there. You open the movie with Michael Rooker in a prison cell. He's got the long hair. You've seen Weasel, and you've got Pete Davidson in there. You got Nathan Fillion. He's like the detachable man or detachable kid. I can't even remember his total name in the movie. They all die in the first 20 minutes. I'm not kidding. The movie literally opens up with, hey, you get to go on a mission. These are your brothers and sisters for the mission. Turns out, Viola Davis, she's back as Amanda Waller. She's like, you're going into this mission, and you're all going to die. You find out a couple minutes after they all die that they were a distraction, and the B team that includes King Shark and Ratcatcher, I think that's her name, and the Polka Dot Man and Bloodsport, that's the real team. That's the A team, as it were. The B team, they all get massacred. People at the Suicide Squad office are taking bets on which ones are going to die. It's hilarious and bizarre, and you do get to see Jai Courtney's Captain Boomerang die. So basically, it's hilarious. It's a funny intro. The first 20 minutes is really zany, and it's super R-rated and super violent, and everything you'd want it to be. And Gunn does that. He accomplishes that. So he takes that huge swing for the fences risk with this IP just to begin with, which is already kind of a crazy thing to do. The movie then takes off into what feels like a 2-hour-long, mega violent, mega R-rated sort of acid trip. Your big star power coming from Idris Elba, John Cena, and Margot Robbie. All three of them kill it. Cena is absolutely excellent. All the funny stuff that you saw in the trailer with him as Peacemaker really works. As I mentioned, the stuff that James Gunn goes for with this movie feels like the kind of stuff that would happen if you were a director that was given a blank check. Like, hey, make the movie that you want to make the way you want to make it. We'll back you. We know you've been successful in the past. Do it. And that's what this movie feels like. The mission starts, of course, with King Shark, with Bloodsport, with Harley all together. Harley and Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag are actually part of the A-team. They're the survivors of the beach massacre. They end up pairing up with the B-team. The big villain is Starro the Conqueror, which I didn't look into, but I'm pretty certain is a classic Suicide Squad villain. It's a giant starfish that emits tiny starfish from the giant starfish. They like latch onto people's faces like facehuggers and Alien, and then basically all exist as like a zombified group mind. It has very like B-movie horror vibes, and it's super fun to watch. I would say that the star of the movie more than anyone is Idris Elba. And I don't want to say that he replaces Will Smith because I don't feel like it's like an equal comp, and the super jacked leading man shoot guns black actor comp is not really a fair comparison. But on some level, they both have a relationship to a child that drives them to do what they're doing. So there is a little bit of a similarity there. And I like Idris as much, I think. I really liked Will Smith in the first one. He and Margot were the two parts that worked for me. And I'd say Idris is just as good. Margot's better. She's probably the best version of Harley that we've seen in the movie. She gets like some pretty sweet Birds of Prey-esque badass fighting scenes where she's just like taking people on and going for it. Very comic booky stuff, which is really, really fun. She has a romance plot in the movie that's really, really fun that definitely sells it. I think probably for me, the highlight of the movie has to be Cena, Peacemaker. He's just great. He doesn't work on his own as much, but David Dastmalchian, who is the Polka Dot Man, and also Ratcatcher, they're all great. Like, they do a really good job, the main team, and then Stallone as King Shark as well brings a lot of humor, a lot of levity. There's a lot of humor in this movie. It's like a pure R-rated comedy. A lot of good, laughs. There's some emotional stakes. I think probably when I think about this movie and I want to compare this to, say, like a Wonder Woman, the big difference is that Wonder Woman feels like it has big emotional stakes. This movie's not going for it the same way, but I think it's a little more balanced from beginning to end. Whereas I think Wonder Woman, I don't like the last 20, 30 minutes of the movie, but overall, that's the closest if I'm going to give like a ranking or whatever. I think where I look at this movie and I look at Suicide Squad from 2016, and if we take at face value what we've heard about the Ayer cut, I think for me what it is that if I believe a David Ayer version of Suicide Squad exists without the needle drops and with, as he says in his statement, three-dimensional characters, it may be a good movie, but it wouldn't be anything like this movie. Because David Ayer classically makes safer movies. The type of stuff, whether it's, like I said, End of Watch, or I think he wrote Dark Blue, I'm pretty sure, he writes pretty like crime-centric dramas, and I like his movies. I think there's some invention in his films. I'm a fan of David Ayer, but I don't think the best version of David Ayer's Suicide Squad without the editing gets anywhere near to the irreverence and the humor and the violence and the, frankly, like thinking outside of the box for a superhero movie that this movie gets to. This is one of the most unique superhero or supervillain movies ever made, and it's for all the same reasons Guardians worked. Right? Like, you can see the exact same template. You can see James Gunn saying, I've got access to these characters that none of you really know. And it's a little different here because he's got Harley. And I think that first Suicide Squad didn't have a single character that the general public had any idea about. So he had to respect Harley Quinn and make her a star in this. And he does. But ultimately, it's the same formula. It's just an R-rated one where he gets to do what he wants. So I commend James Gunn. I commend DC. And I think it's another movie trending in the direction of let creators make what they want to make. Todd Phillips making Joker, which I understand is not technically DCEU, is great. Not because I think the movie is necessarily great. I do like that movie. But because the performance and the format and the style of the movie got to be unique. It got to be what he wanted to make. I don't like Aquaman, but I feel like Aquaman is doing the same thing. It's big and dumb and adventurous and takes risks and has an octopus playing the drums, and that's okay. If the movie's not great, it still works. Look at what happens when Taika makes Ragnarok in the MCU. When you allow creative directors, and there's a lot of similarities between Taika and James Gunn in a lot of ways. Spoiler alert, Taika's in the Suicide Squad. He has a cameo at the end. But when you let directors like that do what they're going to do, I really believe that you get the best product. So at the end of the day, the Suicide Squad goes in, they all bond, it's a lot of fun, there's some great violence, some great kills, they defeat Starro the Conqueror, it's the Ratcatcher that's able to get in there and wreck the giant starfish, and then there's a post-credit scene that we all waited for, we sat patiently waiting, and the post-credit scene is that Peacemaker, who had died in the film, is still alive. They somehow managed to keep him alive, Peacemaker, and we know he has a spin-off series at HBO Max, and that's probably why. And he's a total dickbag, and it'll be fun to watch another series with him. I liked Peacemaker in this movie a great deal, and I think, could a sequel from James Gunn with the same group be as good? Debatable. I think this is one of those one-and-done type of situations where I think it's going to be best the way that it is. However, would I watch it? 1,000%. The safest good DCEU movie that we have is Shazam. This is far and away the best risky one. It just is. It's James Gunn getting to do what he wants to do and doing it really, 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 really well. So I think those are going to be my main thoughts for the Suicide Squad. I think it is a drastic, dare I say it, 70% improvement from Suicide Squad. I don't think there's a version of Suicide Squad that would be as good as this or even really hold a candle to it in terms of creativity. I do believe probably there's a version of Suicide Squad that we will likely get at some point that will be better. I'm glad they put this in the hands of someone who cares. And now, truthfully, I cannot wait for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This has been Action Industries. My name is Ben Bateman. Thanks for watching another movie review. I know this one was a little bit long. Leave your thoughts below in the comments. What is your favorite DCEU film? Did you see this? Did you like it? I hope you did. Are you a fan of Suicide Squad? And if so, let me know why. I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to hear why you like that movie. Seriously, let me know. Otherwise, guys, hit that subscribe button if you like what we do here. We have tons and tons and tons of reactions, reviews, and live streams. And I will see you guys on the next one. Enjoy your weekend.